Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Stefanic Naujoks and I'm Research Director at IDC's Manufacturing Insights team based in Munich, Germany. And today I have with me Sasa Petrovic, who is Direct Account Technology Strategist at the Cloud Software Group. And Sasa and I will be discussing how manufacturers can master the storms of disruptions, which we currently see in the manufacturing industry. And we will have a closer look at the importance of ensuring supply chain resiliency and secure operations, while at the same time balancing costs. So Sasa, why don't you start with a short introduction and set the scene for our conversation.
Thank you, Stephanie, and hello and welcome also from my side. Stephanie, thank you also for your work here. It's also a big pleasure for me to present finally also the results of the research together. So let's get started. I think it's important to me, before we start actually, to talk about the future trends and also on some research outcomes, to set the scene a little bit with current mode of operation and the challenges we face today. I think it's at that point simpler also to connect the dots from today to the future. It explains us a little bit easier and simpler the motion and the way how we can actually come to the future results. And I think this picture explains the manufacturing industry pretty well. To me, manufacturing is one of the most complex industries. I mean, we have production, we have engineers, research and development, logistics, and many different types of office workers. So, and all the different user workforces and areas or units, they have different processes, and with that also different issues. Some of the issues are dependent to each other, and I think that makes it very, very complex to me. So in particular, what I have seen this year, also last year, and I'm not going into all the details of the challenges the manufacturing industry is facing. Almost in every conversation, I have cybersecurity conversations. I would say ever since the pandemic, cybersecurity has a higher visibility, which is the right track. I think we need to improve here, but I see the visibility is better than in the past. Yeah. Supply chain disruption, also a very important topic for the manufacturers. We have the China to US trade war. We have the war in Ukraine, raw material shortage. So a lot of changes in this entire area. And since the inflation, since we have higher inflation last year, also a risk for recession. I would say since this year, almost every conversation or every touch point with the customer, we are looking at cost savings. Cost savings was always important, but it feels like to me, manufacturing industry is asking or looking more to cost savings than ever before. So what is actually more or less the response? I think we need to be a little bit more agile and resilient. I know agility is a little bit an exhausted word, but I think it's the right way to go. We need to react faster in unforeseen events. So we need to prepare ourselves actually for the next storm and the next disruption. And more often than not, the answer lies in IT. And with that statement, I would like to hand over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Sasa. And yes, so I, of course, fully agree with you on this. So, and especially on your statement here, the time for manufacturers to future-proof themselves and their supply chain is definitely now. And also we at IDC see, of course, that IT and digital technologies are major enablers from our perspective. And yes, of course, supply chains are definitely the need to address supply chain resiliency, therefore, is a major topic. And these are actually some of the key topics, therefore, we would like to touch upon today. So first, how to ensure uninterrupted supply. Then we will also look into the importance of being a trusted supplier, partner, customer, or employer, which among others requires to ensure secure operations. And you touched upon that as well, Sasha. And we will look into why a focus on costs, of course, is key to address while at the same time ensuring the two topics above, uninterrupted supply and securing operations. So let's dive right into supply chains. And to start with, our research shows that 43% of manufacturers in Europe consider global supply and a lack of components a major concern, for sure. And compared to just a few years ago, the focus of supply chain optimizations has clearly changed. And this is because in the past, there was a strong focus on efficiency and effectiveness in the supply chain. And today, we see a strong focus on companies on resilient supply chains. And one of our recent studies shows that almost every second manufacturing company in Europe thinks or considers optimizing supply chain resilience as as being among the top 3 business priorities in the next 3 to 4 years. And supply chain resiliency is kind of a buzzword. So let me briefly explain what we at IDC mean by it. And for us, resilient supply chains are those that have the ability to see what is happening in the supply chain in the first place. And for this, supply chains need to be transparent, but it doesn't only help or just help to see what is happening. Ideally, you also understand why something is happening. And last but not least, it's not enough to understand why something is happening, but it's also important to understand how or what you could do about it, about any issues that might happen in the supply chain. And of course, it's also important to be able to react at all, because it doesn't help to know what a certain supplier will, or that a certain supplier will probably not be able to deliver some agreed goods in the next 2 weeks, right? An alternative supplier must be available at all in the first place, or an alternative transportation route must be possible and must be known. So we see that manufacturers are improving their supply chain resilience, and they do that to ensure uninterrupted supply. But at the same time, this will also help them to shorten delivery and fulfillment times, and also to achieve more accurate shipping and delivery forecasting. So there are a lot of initiatives we see among manufacturers, and I'll share with you some of the key initiatives we see in each of these 3 pillars. So initiatives related, for example, that relate to increasing or improving the ability to see relate, for example, to optimizing the monitoring of wherever supply is in the supply chain, or it includes the implementation of supply chain control towers, which basically is about the implementation of central interfaces to bring together and to process supply chain data. And we also actually see quite some demand for last mile logistics optimization, as not every local third-party logistics provider is equipped with the GPS trackers. That's a challenge as well. Then initiatives that relate to the ability to understand are, for example, increasingly related to applying algorithms to data from all kinds of relevant data sources, internal sources and external sources. So sources such as the ERP or the SCM or the warehouse management systems, or external data sources from suppliers and third-party logistics providers. So all of this can help to assess if suppliers need to be selected, or additional suppliers need to be selected, or alternative transportation routes to be picked. And applying AI can also help to assess or can help organizations to analyze the impact of supply chain decisions on product costs, supply chain risks, and delivery times, and can also enable to give recommendations on next best actions, taking various impacts and trade-offs into account. And if AI helps to make recommendations on next best actions, so processes can even be intelligently be automated. And talking about automation, this brings me to the next topic, initiatives that help to improve the ability to execute, because if you look at automation, this can also help to speed up supply chain processes, such as we see organizations automating the entire source-to-pay workflows. And also further initiatives we see manufacturers to address that help to improve the ability to execute relate to flexible warehousing. This is about using external warehouse space on demand, and which gives organizations more flexibility and to cover logistics peaks, such as seasonal peaks, or to support special campaigns. So this is really, in a nutshell, what we see manufacturers doing or tackling to improve their supply chain resilience.
Thank you, Stephanie. So when I look back actually at my journey now, the last 2 or 3 years, I would say supply chain conversations have increased 2 years ago. Nevertheless, when I look at the conversations that we have today, so at some point they are still similar, same. I also feel like some companies, especially large enterprise companies, global companies, haven't really progressed as anticipated. So with that, I mean, supply chain changes do not happen overnight. So what are some of the major challenges the manufacturers are facing in this transformation from supply chain into a resilient supply chain?
Yeah, Sasha, you are absolutely right. All this is easier said than done, of course. Yeah, and we do observe quite some common challenges that apply for a lot of manufacturers we talk to and where we do research, those we categorize those into 4 main areas, which it relates to vision, people, technology, and processes. And vision is really what we mean by that is that whatever you do in order to try to transform your supply chains, for example, towards becoming more resilient, you need a shared vision, right? This sounds easy, but it doesn't help if a headquarter in Germany, for example, comes up with a new supplier onboarding processes if the reality process or the reality are totally different in the different regions. And so you need a shared vision. Also, you need to have people on board. You need to have KPIs to make sure everyone is, pulling on the same string, because it doesn't help if a procurement manager has still the most relevant KPIs for them are costs, whereas on the other side he has to improve resiliency, where a way would be to increase stock levels, right? But this comes with additional costs, so KPIs shouldn't be conflicting, right? Then also what we see is that of course organizations have to deal with their existing IT infrastructure and solutions, and but if you want to, for example, increase transparency, you need a lot of data. But currently data is, as you all also know, Sasha, from your conversation, data is stored in numerous applications across the organization. So the biggest challenge we talk about with manufacturers is that data is not integrated. So that's a huge challenge. And then when we look at technology, processes, I mentioned it briefly. Processes are not really standardized. I mean, for sure, there are manufacturers that have done a super job in standardizing processes, but a lot of them haven't. So how can you transform operations if they are not standardized across countries and regions? So these are some of the major topics or challenges that needs to be tackled when you want to move forward as an organization?
I really love that you have actually brought up multiple components, right? Because you need to balance all the different aspects: vision, technology, processes, people. And to me, it is sometimes that there are not often really a comprehensive approach to this, right? One of the areas is neglected, and as soon as one area is neglected, I think the others cannot advance as anticipated, and that might be one of the reasons why it's not progressing as required. Yeah. So another topic is, I mean, collaboration, time to market. You have a huge supplier portfolio, so to say. How relevant is the topic of supplier onboarding for manufacturing organizations?
Yeah, so this question is actually on spot, because if you want to increase your supply chain resilience for many manufacturers, this also means to diversify their supplier base, and this means onboarding of new suppliers, and that's also a huge challenge. This should happen easy and fast, and this is a kind of process that hasn't been standardized in the past across regions. And so we have a lot of conversations where manufacturers are asking for ways on how to optimize and speed up onboarding. So there are technologies out there for this. So thinking about setting up automated workflows for this. But besides automating, purely automating the workflow, the beauty of optimizing the onboarding and offboarding of new suppliers by doing that automatically is that you can use this momentum basically to improve the quality of the onboarding process. What I mean with that is you can, on top of that, ensure that you can also embed compliance requirements, a compliance requirement to environmental sustainability. So this is also an important topic. So by standardizing the onboarding of new suppliers using automated workflows, it's not just that you can speed the whole process up, it's also about ensuring that suppliers meet the relevant criteria you have set up. So, and especially, you haven't asked for that, but I'm mentioning that, ensuring that suppliers are complying with the ESG relevant KPIs is a major topic these days.
Very insightful. So what I also see in our conversations, actually, the number of contractors, of merger and acquisitions, and the changes that we see in the supply chain is much, much higher than it was ever before. So to us, we as a workplace vendor, so to say, it is really important to be part or to participate in this time to market motion, so that we are ensuring that the lead time to onboard a customer, and sometimes also offboard, in supplier, has to be as short as possible. Thank you for the insights. Thank you.
Absolutely, Sasha, and thank you as well. So our next topic, this is about why being a trusted supplier, partner, customer, or employer requires to ensure secure operations. And for sure, to be a trusted supplier, partner, customer, or employer can have many aspects, such as being a reliable supplier who delivers products in time, in the right quality. But ensuring secure operations among all business stakeholders is also among the most important topics today. So to cite our own research, this shows that actually 32% of manufacturers in Europe consider increasing cyber attacks a major concern. And this is actually a topic we, not just you, Sasha, what you mentioned in your introduction, are discussing with your conversations. It's also something we are discussing with our manufacturing community. And the big issue is that increasing cyber attacks pose quite a heightened risk to manufacturers, which can lead to shutdowns of factory operations, and also quite some significant costs to remediate security breaches. And there are multiple of public examples where manufacturers have been impacted quite significantly or heavily by cyber attacks. So there is definitely a need for organizations to ensure that their operations run secure and that they are protected from cyber attacks of any kind. And this includes, among others, enabling or ensuring secure and reliable data transmission. It needs IT security, IoT security, and basically security of all sorts of edge devices, and of course also security of production assets and tools. And whereas IT security is kind of a very mature domain in organizations already, security for operations technology, so OT, is only a topic since the OT is getting more and more connected, and Industry 4.0 related initiatives on the shop floor or initiatives related to becoming a smart factory more and more also exposed the operations technology domain to security risks. So much more than when production assets and tools on the shop floor were a super closed system. And when we look at investment plans related to ensuring secure operations, our research shows that IT security is more mature than securing OT. And you can see this in the dark blue and light blue bars, which shows the share of manufacturers that have implemented security solutions already. And but what our research also shows is that OT security is catching up, shown in the green bar, which shows that the share of manufacturers investing in OT security for the first time is quite high. It's actually every third manufacturer. And increasingly, the share of manufacturers that have no investment planned is relatively high for IT security. And those manufacturers most likely rely on embedded security functionality of the enterprise software or IT infrastructure which they are using. Manufacturers are not relying for this for their OT environment. Therefore, the share of those that not planning investments in OT security is quite low. However, I believe that the need for OT security is only there if OT assets get connected. And today, there is still quite a large share of OT that is not connected at all. And therefore, the need to secure non-connected OT assets is, of course, low. It only gets super relevant, of course, once OT equipment is connected. And
so I think we can talk about security for hours, right? So as I also mentioned in my introduction, it feels like security has a higher visibility. I would also say that the CISO finally has a seat on the table, right? But where are we in this entire journey? Are manufacturers equipped with the right concepts for IT, OT strategies? Where do they lack? Where are we? Yeah, so it's a huge challenge to give a short answer here, but from my perspective, the major challenge lies in the fact that IT and OT is still struggling in collaborating. It's not a new topic, right? To build a stronger collaboration between those two domains is not a new requirement we see, but the reality is that they are still struggling. So they haven't quite figured out yet how to establish an IT-OT governance structure in their organization. Some have already managed to do so, but I would say a large share of manufacturers has not quite figured out yet how to set up solid governance structures here. And also, this is so it's not just a matter of a lack of sufficient collaboration and comprehensive collaboration. Very often there is simply a lack of skills
for both IT and OT security. And it's not that easy to find skills that, cover the IT side, the OT side, and also the IT-OT security aspect. And what we therefore also see, maybe interesting to share here, is that our research shows that manufacturers are quite heavily relying on IT-OT security aspects on their tech vendors. So this is an important vendor selection criteria when they select a tech vendor. Quite interesting. And also, not to forget, most of the time, security, not just in the IT domain, but also thinking about OT, it's not always and only a matter of technology. When you read some of the about the recent OT security breaches, the biggest risks are human, right? And one of the major cyber attacks at a super large automotive supplier was due to an employer who downloaded a non-approved app which included malware. So it's not just technology; it's also about educating humans.
That's a very good point. Yeah, it's always this balanced technology culture and processes, similar to actually the first topic that we had. And I think skills is another factor which is important, because OT IT security is in my eyes also different, right? So we have different products in the background, different solutions, different concepts, right? So you have to adjust and align actually to the specific component at hand, so to say. Thank you for your feedback.
Yeah. Then let's dive into our next topic, which is focus on costs, which is, of course, key to address our current inflationary pressure. We see rising energy prices and the global competition. And how does this match with the need to ensuring uninterrupted supply chains and secure operations, which both tend to come with higher costs, especially ensuring uninterrupted supply chains? So basically, I think it's important for manufacturers to balance both, right? Cost savings and innovations. And we see a lot of manufacturers being under quite some pressure dealing with inflation or partially high energy prices. And even if prices have gone down again by now a bit, uncertainty remains, given the lessons learned from the past, and given the dependency from gas is high, for example, in Germany. So we see, and also our research shows, that 40% of manufacturers in Europe consider the need to reduce costs as a major driver for investments in digital solutions on the shop floor. And almost a third consider the need to reduce energy consumption as a major driver for investments on the shop floor. But given the global competition, there is clearly a need to not fall behind competition and to innovate. And whether these innovations relate to product or service innovations or process innovations and transformations doesn't really matter. In any case, this requires investments that will most likely drive costs as well. And we see a third of manufacturers in Europe who consider the need to improve agility and flexibility and the ability to customize a major driver for investments in digital solutions on the shop floor. And improving agility and flexibility in our case refers to being able to react to changing customer and market demands quickly and to adapt shop floor operations quickly. And also improving customization is another major topic which manufacturers have to address in order to stay competitive. And the ability to offer customers individual configurations of products is key to increasingly demanding customers. So these are just some aspects I have highlighted here, but in general, improving competitive advantage can be viewed as a general driver of investments in digital solutions on the shop floor. And what I want to take you home, what I would like to take you home or take away from this session today is also that manufacturers need to have the hands in the now and eyes in the future.
It's also super interesting, Stephanie. As I also said at the beginning, we have different areas within manufacturing: logistics, research and development, we have engineering, and so on and so forth. So are there any areas where there is more pressure for on cost savings?
I wouldn't say that there are some specific areas where cost savings are the major topic. I think this depends on the individual situation of manufacturing organizations, of course. But so I would more phrase it like we see that manufacturers are reprioritizing some of their planned projects partially. And of course, it's advisable, and most of them do, they are tackling the low-hanging fruits first, right? But basically, business potential is like everywhere. The thing is, we have touched upon the skill gap, and we have touched upon automation. And for example, if you don't manage to close your skill gap in an organization, and if you have like tasks that can be automated, automation can be a means of replacing manual work with automation, and this has a potential to reduce cost. And depending on the tasks, those cost savings can be achieved in a quite short time frame, and the more complex and the more domains are involved, also in the, of course, mid to long term. So automation is something that can help to realize cost savings, in combination with the fact that there is a skill gap or a gap of certain talents anyway. One thing I wanted to mention here is, and because we are having discussions about that as well, and I think I mentioned it, on one hand, of course, it's important that organizations have a very high focus on cost savings, and this has become in particular important due to the need to reduce costs. But it's also important, and we talked about it at the very beginning, to improve the resiliency. But this comes with costs, right? So because if you increase your warehouse stock, this increases cost, or if you have to purchase from 3 suppliers from 3 countries, is of course more cost intense than just using one supplier. So this is again where I would like to close the loop to the previous slide, saying that you have to balance both, right? Costs and transforming your operations.
And I really think that this sentence is spot on. So when we had an executive summit recently, and one of the attendees actually said, when we talked about cost savings, that they are actually differentiating between daily business and project business / innovation. So they are putting pressure on cost savings within daily business to be able actually to keep the budget for innovation, right? So I think the example that you also mentioned with automation is one of the best examples, right? If you will cut costs within automation, you will probably lose actually a little bit the drive and the pace against competition. I mean, ChatGPT has really disrupted the office workers, so to say. But on the other hand, at the shop floors, we will see more and more robotics, more and more automation as well, right? So I think it's really important to be laser focused on innovation and to try to do the cost savings where possible in the daily business. So to have this some sort of differentiation, yeah. You also mentioned now several times talents, skills. When I look back, actually, the last 3 years, we have hybrid work, remote work, and in all this transition, I think one segment was a little bit neglected: the frontline workers, right? So they couldn't actually benefit from hybrid work, remote work, but they also have demand for some flexibility. What is your take on this? Is something going to change in this area?
Yeah, absolutely great that you mentioned that, because we are having quite some conversations with our manufacturing community, which is me telling me that increasingly the frontline workers, as you said, are requesting new ways of working, and where you would have expected in the past, well, you are working in a factory, so you're supposed to be here on site. So there was no doubt about that. But given the need to recruit talents and to make the workplaces more attractive, manufacturers are increasingly thinking about also offering those workers new places to work or new workplace experiences. And of course, not all the tasks are really suitable and it wouldn't work, but there are some, right? If you think about the thing that you don't need to have an expert on certain machines or processes in every factory. Why not connecting experts remotely, right? To assist a less experienced but a new talent with a problem he has on his production side. So there are ways of also enabling new ways of working, and also thinking about remote condition monitoring is something that is possible, or remote quality monitoring. So remote operations isn't something we see on a very large scale, but even here, there are some scenarios where you can think about that, like drones or remote controlling of drones or drilling equipment in some hazardous environment underwater, or in mining or remote locations like the Sahara or the desert. So what I wanted to say is here, it depends on the locations and the tasks, but yes, increasingly we see that the manufacturers have the need to, offer also factory workers new ways of working. That's new.
Absolutely agree. And I think maybe when we look at remote operations, that might be still early stage. We have been asking in particular how we can actually provide or add some flexibility when it comes to workplace tasks. So enablement, training, admin stuff. So blue-collar workers still have to do these sort of activities. So why not doing it at home and giving them a little bit more flexibility? I'm not saying it will be 80% of the entire time, but it can be 20%, even 50%. That still is the first very small step actually to give actually the employees some more flexibility. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Stephanie. So I would like actually to close the session, or actually to start actually the last part with an overview also from your study and research, the digital first world. I think one of the outcomes is that we need to leave the digital transformation phase and enter a native digital world in order to be able to produce more, to have a competitive advantage. Because as soon as you are in this digital native world, you are able actually to produce at a faster pace, right? The three elements that you have actually identified were scale, impact, and trust. And I really like these three elements because they are very meaningful. When I look at scale, it means that cost-effective digital operations, right? So to be able to scale up and scale down faster, to be more flexible in general. Impact, to me, very, very important. When I look at solutions, some solutions do not have the right impact to the line of business, especially when it comes from the IT, right? So we have to come closer to the line of business. We have to provide a more meaningful benefit to the line of business in order to drive innovation and to bring the entire organization forward. And last but not least, I think it's not a coincidence that trust is the baseline actually of the picture. It is a huge or a very important element. Trust to the customer, to the suppliers, but also to the partners and employers. When you also look up at any agility article, the very first word that you will notice is trust, right? So that is in my eyes another component which is important in this entire journey. We tried actually to map also the Cloud Software Group solutions. So with Scale, we have added NetScaler because we really believe any app, any infrastructure, that NetScaler can be and will be actually the bridge to this hybrid multi-cloud environment in order to be able to connect all the different environments, also to ensure that scalability is possible across all the different infrastructures. At the right-hand side, we have put Citrix Desktop as a Service. The reason for that, and also in relation to our research here, is when I look at contractors, merger and acquisitions, suppliers in general, Citrix Desktop as a Service can provide a huge benefit when it comes to onboarding speed, offboarding speed, but also from cost savings perspective. So you don't have to hand out, for example, an endpoint. You can use Citrix with a bring your own device approach, and you reduce this way the costs. And in my eyes, it is also one of the most secure concepts that you can have. The last point, trust. I mean, with trust, it maybe sounds a little bit strange, but in order to establish trust, you have to never trust and always verify. And this is one of the principles of zero trust. And we are providing here a comprehensive solution with Citrix Secure Private Access. I would also like to point out that the research, the outcomes that we have discussed here is coming as an info brief. Please keep an eye on the Citrix blogs and also on our social media channels. It will be promoted anytime soon. And with that, I would like to say thank you for your attention. Thank you also for participating. Please stay connected, reach out to me via the different channels, LinkedIn or Twitter, so that we can continue the conversations. Also, do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you and have a nice day.
And thank you too. And thank you, Sasha. And especially, I can also recommend to look out for this info brief. Fantastic read, of course.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you.